Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Middlegames series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at an episode in the game between SlowChess Blitz and Stockfish in the TCEC Season 22 Division P. This shows a fantastic bit of defense by Stockfish, really quite amazing. We're going to have a look at that first, and then afterwards we will have a look to see how White might have done better had White anticipated what on earth Stockfish was up to. So what is this position? Well, actually it's quite unpleasant for Black. I mean, the key thing is that Black doesn't really have any pawn breaks. I mean, there's f6 and there's g5, but that would basically be suicidal. And if you don't have any pawn breaks in a position, then your chances for active play are generally quite limited. By contrast, White has ideas of f5 and c4. They'll take some organising. For example, you might need to support f5 with g4, but once they happen, they're looking extremely dangerous. So essentially, White's got good long-term prospects, and Black doesn't really. I mean, if we have a look at the Black pieces, there's a mixture of good stuff and bad stuff. The doubled rooks there are attacking the pawn on c3, or eyeing it in any case, which helps, restrict White's play just a little bit. The same thing applies to the knight on c5, which is attacking the pawn on a4. That will tie down the white piece to its defense, and also looking at the e4 square. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of sort of generally active, but not really doing a great deal positive. The queen's not doing very much. And the bishop on b7, bishop on e7. I mean, the bishop on b7 tied down by the pawn on d5. The bishop on e7 defending dark squares, but not doing anything particularly active. If you look at the white pieces, well, this bishop on d4 is superb. I mean, it defends c3, attacks b6, makes sure that Black doesn't really want to exchange off this knight at all, or b6 will be almost impossible to defend. And also points towards the king will really come into its own when White breaks with f5. I mean, bishop on d3, knight d2, not doing anything great at the moment, but they'll come into their own when we attack with f5. And at the moment, they're keeping the black knight out of e4 and also out of b3 as well. And well, the white major piece is not amazing at the moment, but obviously, if pawn breaks start to happen, then they'll definitely find some useful employment on the f file. So basically, Black's got big problems here, long term. And what Stockfish did here was quite amazing. So to me, this position felt very much like, well, Black can't really do anything, just has to sit and wait until White gets the breaks together and starts attacking, which is not a good place to be in. But Stockfish managed to find an idea that well, actually required some urgency and some precision from White. And well, unfortunately for SlowChess, it was actually lacking at the crucial moment. But it's an amazing plan, really great defensive plan. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the defensive plan and then just have a look at a couple of moments where you say, well, yeah, probably if White had anticipated this just a little bit better, then, White could have done this or that. So what did Stockfish do? Stockfish played the move Queen d8. Bishop e2 was played by SlowChess. Yeah, interesting moment about where to put this bishop, but this definitely has a point as well. Queen h8 from Stockfish. Yeah, looks bizarre. I mean, sometimes engines play these sort of shuffle moves. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you play Queen e8 or Queen f8 or Queen g8 or Queen h8, and so they do something funny. So that was my my first thought when I saw this move. But g4 played by White, very sensible, building up for that f5 break. And now the move King f8. And again, yeah, sort of caught in two minds. I mean, is Black really planning to move the king over to the queen side, or is this just one of those shuffle moves, and you'll go King g8 on the next move and King h7? Well, SlowChess played Rook f1. Note that there's a cunning little tactical trap in this, that f5 isn't immediately possible because of bishop g5, and the knight on d2 is lost. So yeah, some care is needed from White, and yeah, some organisation as well. So rook f1 played by SlowChess, very natural. I mean, supporting this f5 break, not threatening it yet because that threat of bishop g5 is still in there. And now king e8, and then you suddenly realise, oh wait a minute, black really is serious here. Black's really thinking of putting the king over to the queen side somehow. But again, not completely clear how we're going to manage that. Bishop f3 played by SlowChess, and now rook d7. And actually, at this moment, Stockfish's evaluation dropped from well over +1 for white to well, getting close to equality. And well, essentially, Stockfish is calculating here that you can't actually stop it from getting its king to safety on the queen side. So SlowChess played bishop d1, still a little bit oblivious, and king d8. And now we're down to 0.00. Queen e1, just getting out of the way of bishop g5. King c7, f5 played, and now h5. And yeah, I mean, this is quite beautiful in actual fact because everything's fitting together. So the queen moved away to h8, out of the way, in order to allow this move rook d7, and then the king moved along behind the rook round to c7. This was the best defensive structure that Stockfish could find to allow this transfer of the king. And now, actually, this queen on h8, it wasn't just to get out of the way, it's also creating counter threats against the white king. And, well, f takes g6, f takes g6, queen e3, king b8 played. I mean, in principle, white is still a little bit better here. Black's king is now safe. It's now possible to start launching, pawn-based counterattacks because the king's out of danger. Still a lot of weak squares in the black position, but well, I mean, this wasn't so bad for Stockfish, and these are the sort of positions that it can hold pretty well. And it managed to do so with a little bit of difficulty. But rook d4, queen d4, king a7, threatening all sorts of ideas like bishop c5, followed by queen takes c5. So white felt compelled to give up the exchange back. And still a bit better for white, but Stockfish held this fine. So quite an amazing idea, this whole plan. I'll just play it through again just to see it. Queen d8, queen h8, and then moving the king along behind the rook, and then after white strikes, black strikes back. Amazing multi-stage plan there. So what could white have done better? Well, I mean, I think the key thing really is that you had to anticipate this plan of moving the king over to the queen side, and there are actually quite a few places, where white could have tried to hold that back. I mean, one idea is to play rook ad1. I mean, actually, offering this this a pawn, but also creating some threats in return. I mean, if you take the a pawn, we can look at c4 and f5 just as a pawn sacrifice, and in we go. The nice idea about it is that after rook d1, if you just try and play king d8 and keep on getting the king over, there's this sudden idea, knight c4. So if d takes c4, we go bishop takes b7, knight b7, bishop b6 check, king e8 takes, and queen e4. And this is a very unpleasant position for black. Knight d8, rook d1, king e8, queen d4, and actually queen d7 is simply going to pick up this rook. There's the black pieces are sort of cut off in the middle. There's no way to defend. I mean, here you've really managed to exploit the bad points to queen h8, which is putting the queen on the corner of the board, cut off from the queen side. And if you just go something like king c7, we go knight d6, and yeah, well, this was the exchange, and f5 is coming in, totally lost position. Obviously, if knight d6, you can't take like this because, well, another good side to the bishop on d4, and another bad side to queen on h8. So, I mean, that was one idea. I mean, another idea is that at the moment where the black king is heading over, you want to play a move like c4 and, play that break. Here it's a little bit too early because you've got rook d8, and actually all of this pressure on the d file is actually, completely fine for black. And here again we use the move h5, just trying to break up the king side, and after g5 we just head back. And well, the rook's beautifully placed. perfectly fine when the d file will be opened, and the king's just coming back into safety because, well, now the f5 break is not going to happen. So that was pretty interesting. That's just moving one move back, rook d1 as a way to try and last gasp attempt to stop this king coming over d8 to c7. I mean, if we go just a little bit earlier, after black plays this move king e8, actually I didn't like the move bishop f3, and the move that I really wanted, also when I was looking at the game live, was rook a2. What's the point of rook a2? Actually just defend this this knight on d2. So f5 really is a threat because bishop g5 no longer wins a piece. And well, I mean, I like this bishop on e2. I mean, I don't want to put it on the f file because it blocks f5. I like it on e2 because it supports c4, and it can also come to d3 if necessary, which is actually quite a good square there, really. And well, if you're having a look at the lines that were happening in my engine matches between Koivisto and Stockfish, well, for example, if we go rook d7 in this position, we play f5, queen h7, bishop d3. So yeah, this bishop went to e2. Well, white's putting it back to d3 to this diagonal, and it just makes this f5 move so much more dangerous because we're really putting pressure on the pawn on g6. Bishop g5, queen f3, king d8, and now something very, very interesting that was happening a lot. It's takes, and then this move knight b3, and this is a very unpleasant move. If you take the knight, the refutation is not super obvious. It's this move rook a f2, and actually just threatening queen f7 check and following up with mate just because the king's been well, caught in the center there. And if you don't take the knight on b3, then I can just well, here I can take and go queen f8 check, for example, and after takes bishop c5, then white's actually doing very, very well here. Rook e2. We're attacking this bishop. This pawn's undefended behind it, and g6 is also undefended as well. Yeah, these endings were turning out to be wins for white. So again, this move bishop f3 from white was probably quite a poor move. It slows down the f5 break, and also wasn't particularly helping the c4 break either. And I think maybe if you just go back just to the beginning, I mean, we talked after this move queen d8 that this move bishop e2 was a little bit odd. I mean, in principle, in some of my games the engines were playing queen e8 rather than queen d8. It doesn't really matter, but in principle this move bishop c2 was much more interesting, I think, because the bishop on c2 covers the pawn on a4, and that frees both these rooks to become active. And well, I mean, if I can transfer one rook to f3 and the other rook to f1, then this g4 f5 break will be much more interesting. And actually, one thing that Stockfish was doing, this was quite an interesting game, Stockfish against Koivisto here. I'm not sure Koivisto really got the same plan as Stockfish, was playing queen f8 rather than queen h8. But what Stockfish did, always in combination with his bishop on c2, was very nice. Playing queen g3, king h7, and then knight f1, and after h5 playing knight e3. And this is a very nice setup here, because after you go knight e4, I just take, and well, this knight is covering c4, so you can't get into c4. It's stopping the e pawn from moving forward, so the bishop remains behind. And then Stockfish was just playing rook d1, and well, just aiming to double on the d file. And well, at some stage you're going to take this pawn on b6, not worry about the pawn on c3, or maybe put it safe on c4. And where's black's counterplay? Black's got this move knight e4 in, but no counterplay has been gained. And well, if you go something like bishop c5, we'll just line up and get the d file. So I thought this was a very nice setup as well from Stockfish, and it was leading to lots and lots of wins. So again, black was in great difficulties here, but this plan queen d8 to h8 basically meant that white wasn't able to develop its initiative just in any way it wanted to. And well, SlowChess chose yeah, rather slow and indecisive way. And well, by the time it got its act together, Everything that black wanted had come to fruition. King out of the way, allowing black to counterattack on the king's side with pawns, aided by the queen that had placed in the corner straight away. And then we saw quite a few different ways that, essentially if white was alert, then, even on the 34th move, rook d1, but take some calculation to give up the pawn on a4, or a little bit earlier with moves like rook a2, or I suppose even better earlier on with a move like bishop c2 before, and then a different setup for white. That would have been a great way of really putting Stockfish into trouble. But I thought it was a great defensive concept. I mean, always, astounded at how engines can just come up with these sort of Petrosian, king walks from one side of the board to the other. Amazing what they can do with planning nowadays. And again, I might have vaguely thought about, wouldn't it be nice to get the king over to the queen side? But I never really dreamt that it would remotely be possible. And this whole way of playing it, putting the queen in the corner, putting the rook on d7 and getting counterplay with h5, was really quite extraordinary. So amazing defensive play there from Stockfish, and that's the sort of defensive play that made sure that it didn't lose a single game in Division P. Well, let's have a look how it goes in the Super Final. If you like this video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, that would be great, or even take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next video.